I have to admit that I am more than flattered by this recent blog post on Hammer Nutrition's site. When Coach Mike sent it to me and I read it, it reminded me of the famous Oscar Wilde quote, "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness." I need to qualify this quote though, because Dr. French is anything but mediocre in his thinking. He is on point and on the right track as an obvious early adopter of OFM, even though he chooses to call it OHM. He even came up with a logo for his OHM acronym, synonymous to our OFM pyramid. So let's review this article so that you can navigate the flood of information out there. And yes, my choice of the word flood is intentional and not a coincidence, because right now, I'm out here in California, and it's been more than a little wet, and we even got a presidential visit out of it. First of all, the article starts out immediately on point. Dr. Kathy and I have had an ongoing discussion on the state of affairs in healthcare, and here's a link to one we happened to record. Like Dr. French, we share a similar view in that modern medicine is a life-saving thing in acute situations. After all, Kathy's an ICU doc and a trauma surgeon, but has utterly failed in addressing the underlying conditions of a myriad of chronic diseases plaguing modern man. The solution lies in your hands, outside the system, and these systems are, for the most part, low to no cost ones. Dr. French's OHM concept is really an acronym for true human health. And how do you attain that state? By optimizing fat metabolism. You see, when you focus on the metabolism of fat using the tools of diet, supplementation, training, stress management, and lifestyle in a way individualized for your life, you attain what I call higher health and peak performance. Dr. French is also on point for the most part about keto, including that it is not appropriate for most athletes. And I feel his pain about being called Dr. Keto. Really, I do. Like for the past 22 years. Anytime you talk about carbohydrate restriction, most people, instead of listening to what you have to say, either revert to the keto buzzword as if it encapsulates everything you're saying, or they flat out tell you they cannot exist without carbs. Zero nuance and context, both of which matter way more to you than the promulgators of whatever dietary belief system they are pitching are willing to acknowledge. And like Dr. French, I do not check my blood sugar or ketones or heart rate. I don't count calories or calculate macros. I don't even own a Garmin or any other device for my all-day forays into the mountains. And as you can see in this pic, I'm a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. Look at that breath I have. I want to fill in some gaps and elaborate, as this is a perfect opportunity to do so. Dom D'Agostino's research on the benefits of a ketogenic diet, these really are the benefits of fat metabolism. The diet is one of many factors which drive it. And Jeff Volek's and the FASTER study, actually, all but 2 of the low-carb diet cohort in the FASTER study were actually OFM athletes and used carbs and Vespa in the real world of training and racing. The only time they were on a ketogenic diet was during the data collection. This is what gave them that performance edge, and I suspect, looking at the data, the 2 participants who were markedly lower in the low-carb diet cohort were probably chronic keto, because it is well known and published in the literature that being on a keto diet impacts high performance. Not just in the literature, but pretty much everybody knows who's tried it. Here is an image of the fat oxidation data illustrating this point. Point is that Dr. French is spot on about not recommending a ketogenic diet for athletes. Those winning results of the low-carb diet cohort were not truly done on keto. Fat adapted? Absolutely, but not keto. OFM, which includes Vespa and possibly with some athletes using Hammer's Perpetuum or Heed as a strategic carbohydrate, such as what Dr. French uses. Vespa and strategic carbs are important. I want to stress that ketones themselves are not energetically dense as stated in the article. Ketones are really a proxy for fat burn, and ketones actually liberate slightly less ATP than glucose. For all practical purposes though, ketones and glucose are interchangeable as energy substrates for quick aerobic metabolism. The king of energy generation, however, is beta oxidation. When you are metabolizing fat at a high rate, say greater than a gram a minute, ketones are a byproduct of beta oxidation. Now, what does all this science talk mean to you? After all, it's got to be relevant to you, right? If you're currently on a conventional high-carb diet and want to stabilize your energy levels, avoid GI distress, and minimize recovery time, you need to consider OFM's metabolic reset, followed by the adaptation phase of OFM. While if you're keto and/or low-carb, high-fat, or carnivore, you need to look at OFM's strategic carbs as well as other important facets of the OFM program. Because fat adaptation, fat metabolism is multidimensional, just like you, and why OFM is comprehensive and individualized. As someone who has 22 years of experience with fat adaptation, it's great to see someone like Dr. French who is not married to the dogma of a dietary camp, whether it's keto or carbo. He gets it. But what's most important is this is yet another voice, an expert voice in the endurance sphere, getting the word out that there is a better way to fuel and live, one that taps into your limitless potential. Nothing mediocre about that. It is validation. And I consider that a win for humanity.